videotaping and audio recording this on our own. That's George's and that's mine in the back. I'm going to sneak around and turn it on. And, okay. And everyone has enough index cards for the questions later on, so we can begin. Let me go back and hit play, and George can play and record, and we're good. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you a sitting Board of Trustee member from Area 1, Mr. Bob Arthur. Make him welcome, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you and to the members of your union that are not here today. I'm sure they'll watch the video. I hope they'll watch the video, for the opportunity to address you today and respond to your questions. It has been an honor and a true pleasure to represent Cerritos Community College for 21 years as a sitting member of the Board of Trustees. I hope to do this for 4 more years. I have said publicly, if I am reelected to this seat, this will be my last term. I had seriously considered stepping away from this chair at the end of this term, and at the annual student leadership conference, the students approached me in Temecula where they hosted it, and they're the ones that convinced me to seek re-election. I had, honestly, in the last year, 2 years or so, prior to that conference, had lost focus to some degree of why I wanted to be a trustee. And they reassured me, they convinced me, and brought back that internal fire, that desire for why I did what I did, as serving the community as a board member, as a trustee, and to do it for the students, to do it for the community, and to serve in what is I felt the best interest for the Cerritos Community College District, and all of its employees, but mostly to be student focused. And it really reinvigorated me to seek re-election, and that's what I intend to do, is win this seat and serve 4 more years. And I'll be happy to respond to your questions.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. This is question number 1. Please describe your role as a trustee compared to that of the college superintendent president.
Sure. The Board of Trustees acts, as you all know, as policymakers, and there's a distinct difference between the roles as policymakers versus other elected officials in their communities, city council members, or even at a higher level as the Board of Supervisors. Council members in our areas, they're considered lawmakers, where we are policymakers. As you know, we delegate and regulate all authority to the day-to-day operations of this institution to the president superintendent. We should, as board members, focus on the how of the institution in our deliberations and discussions with the president superintendent, and not focus on the what of the institution. That's the responsibility of the president superintendent and his executive team. If we have questions with regard to the operation, we certainly have the authority and the responsibility to ask the president superintendent of how the college is operating, but it's not our role and responsibility to oversee what our dictate to the president how he runs or she runs this institution. We can make recommendations. We work with the president to establish goals and responsibilities on an annual basis, and we review and evaluate the individual based on the accomplishments of those established goals. And that's what our roles are. It's pretty simple.
Thank you. Question number 2. Please describe your current relationship with the Cerritos College Faculty Federation.
I'd say over the years, my personal relationship with the Federation has been respectful, in the sense that anytime the faculty has contacted me, or any of the representatives of the union has contacted me, I've always met with them, discussed whatever the issues are, but I've always prefaced each of those meetings with, to say specifically, understand that I will not negotiate with you on whatever the topics of conversations will. Generally, those conversations all dealt around the times of contract negotiations. I appreciated whatever input, whatever dialogue that was there and presented to me, and the positions that the union took. I listened very intently and took whatever documents were provided to me as additional information in whatever decisions that needed to be made in moving forward with the negotiations. And that's what I did. I have never, in the history of I think the union's been here for 13 years, 13 years. I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever compromised myself or made a decision based on anything but information that has been provided to me, both from the administration or information that is provided to me from representatives of the union. I'd say we are respectful of one another.
And question number 3, under what circumstances do you believe it is important for you to consult with the CCFF before making a decision as a trustee?
It's an interesting question. Historically, I can't recall I have consulted with members of the union on issues before. These did not have anything to do with negotiations. They had to do with personnel at management level. And it was more at the administrative side, and I valued their input. Greatly valued their input. It's personnel, so I'm not gonna divulge what those conversations were. I hope you understand that.
Okay. And question number 4, the relationship between the Cerritos College Faculty Federation and the district has been strained over the last year due to a protracted negotiation process. How would you work to improve this relationship in the future?
Well, I'd say yes, that's a very true statement. And Marissa kind of hinted to that in one of her responses to a question and in her closing statement. And I'm going to add to that what her comment was about leaving it at the board table. It's over. We've reached a tentative agreement. Whatever those ill feelings were, it's water under the bridge. I'm done with it. I don't harbor any ill feelings. It makes no difference to me. My opinion now is, how do we move forward in a positive manner for the next 2 years? We as an institution are going to need to find new, innovative, creative ways to raise revenues. Revenues that we don't need to depend on the state for revenues, for whatever they may be that we're getting from the state. New creative ways, whether it's the development of the property to the south of us, what I'd like to see us do is use some of the revenues from vintage. We've got, $5 million approximately that is sitting in that fund. And use some of those funds as incentives to all of the faculty members for the creation and expansion of our Kaleidoscope program, Open Resource Educational Materials. You, as the faculty, need to expand these programs. You'll be the ones that are responsible for it. Provide you with the funds in order to do so. Whatever is needed to make sure that our students are provided with digital class books, textbooks, the software programs, the lab experiences, whatever needs to be done, and write you that check. We put aside that money and make it available to you to make that program happen. And if we offer this program, we have digital textbooks and course materials for every course that we teach here on campus. What's gonna happen? Enrollment's gonna skyrocket. Revenues are going to be on better than what they are and projected much, much higher. And if we even get above what our cap is from the state, we'll have enough revenue here to increase class sizes, provide more sections. And this is what I mean about being creative. Whatever happened in the last year, it's done. Now we need to work collaboratively and together to find those creative ways so that when the end of this 2 years is up and that contract is there, and you know it and I know it, we're not gonna have a lot of money left over. So we've gotta have these creative ways to make more revenues there, the development of the property, open resources, and other creative ways of what we can do for the financial stability of this institution. And I'm gonna have 4 years to make it happen. And we're gonna need to all work together to get it done. Next question.
Thank you. And the last prepared question, number 5, why should the CCFF endorse you?
Well, let's go back 21 years. Next question. I would appreciate your endorsement. I think you've endorsed me twice before in all of these campaigns. You endorsed me 4 years ago, and then we had a hiatus, and then you endorsed me 12 years ago, I think it was. And I would appreciate it. As I said, we've had a very respectful relationship. I appreciate all that you do for the students and what your purpose and intent here is on campus. And I think you respect me as well. And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Questions from the floor?
Right here, I have so many of them. I don't know that we're going to get through them, but let me throw them to you. They're coming in like one after the other. So we'll take them in order. Here's the first. Being on the board of one of the largest Hispanic serving institutions in California with a substantial AB 540 student population. And as a Trump supporter, how does this influence your policy making as a trustee?
Being a Trump supporter, has it influenced my decision making? Not in the least. You all know, I was in Cleveland. It was an experience that I'll never forget. It was incredible. I could talk for 30 minutes on just the experience alone. On Monday, before the first session of the conference began, the California delegation was an hour outside of Cleveland. We were given, all of the delegates were given the pamphlet, the booklet that contained the platform for the Republican Party. I read through that page to page, front to back. I think it was 27, 28 pages or so. And as I'm sitting on the bus reading this, I'm saying to myself, and highlighting pages or marking it, I can't agree with this. And I flip the next page, and it's so full of political ease and language that, there's 12 paragraphs before they get to a point of what their position is. And then you read the next section, and yeah, I can agree with that, or read the next section, no, I can't agree with that. So we get to the convention that night, and the chairman's standing at the podium, and he says, do I have a motion from the floor to approve the platform for the Republican Party? And the crowd goes wild. And the chair says, motion accepted, something to that effect. And then the chair asks, all those that are in favor of adoption of the platform, and the crowd goes wild. You've seen it on TV. All those opposed, the crowd's not as wild, but there's still those nays. I voted nay. You're not gonna see that on TV. And there's nobody that registers those votes. And and the chairman standing at the podium says, in the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. Yes, I supported Donald Trump. Yes, I was a delegate from the state of California. It was one of the greatest honors I've ever, it was an incredible experience, but yet it was still phenomenally humbling to be, I don't know how many delegates there were at this convention. 2,000, I don't know what the number was. It was phenomenal. It was something I've never experienced in my entire life, and I've never, ever ventured outside of local politics. I'm very nonpartisan. And after the Democratic convention, Mr. Trump has done everything possible to shoot himself in the foot. I'm not a gambler, but I would bet every penny I have of my retirement fund on Mrs. Clinton. Next question.
Do you support a 28th constitutional amendment to keep money out of politics?
No. How would candidate would have to be self-funded?
Well, I don't know whatever that means, to keep money out of politics.
I guess if there's more to that question, I'm not sure.
It's probably Citizens United, that's what it's called.
Citizens United?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'd have to look more into it because I'm not sure what all that entails. But just to direct answer to that question would be no.
What has been your greatest challenge working with this current board, and how do you plan to overcome this challenge in your next term?
Another good question. I'm going to go back to what my response was to one of the previous questions. We can, whenever you sit as an elected official, you try to come to your board meetings and city council meetings, whatever your responsibilities are. Especially, you know what it's like when you serve on committee meetings. You want to be prepared going into the meeting. That comes as one of the frustrating things when a colleague is unprepared at a meeting. Asking questions when you flip the page to the second page of whatever the agenda item is, and there's the answer to the question. That's a little frustrating. The other part is whatever the outcome of the items on the coming before the board, if you are in favor of it or you lost the vote, you think it should have gone the other way, leave it at the board table. You know, if the board made a decision, you live with the decision and you work the best that you possibly can to support that decision. If you're on the losing side of it, you leave it at the board table. You make a change. If it turns out that decision isn't working, then you do your best to take whatever course actions need to be made to improve it.
Next question. Why should the college retain a reserve far in excess of the recommended 5%? What is all of that money for? It offers services to students and the community.
Well, this comes back to what my opening statement was. Wherever those monies were earmarked and whatever categories they were in, as we get, and I don't like using the word creative, but I don't know how else to describe it, but the budget over the next 2 years, as you're going to see, is going to be creative. Funds are going to get shifted around. The capital outlay fund is going to get moved around into other categories. it's just gonna have to be. And we're going to, like I said, all have to work together to be able to fund this campus to the level that we expect it to be, and be creative in finding those new sources of revenue. And whether or not we call it a reserve, but we're gonna have to keep that state mandated amount, and we're just gonna have to figure out a way to make it all happen.
And the next one, how can the trustees help our part-time instructors?
Well, I think we've taken some pretty good inroads in that direction with the tentative agreement. Historically, we have supported part-timers, but not to the degree that we've always wanted to. 4 years or 2 years ago, 4 years ago, when I stood before all of you in the teleconference center, and I told you then that I supported office hours for part-time faculty, and we got them. But we didn't get them to the degree that we wanted them, but we got them. And now that this contract is a tentative agreement, we've advanced that, and I'm glad for it. You know that the part-timers are a large majority of our faculty, and we have that formula by which our full-time faculty members are hired, and the percentage of full-time that we have to keep. That's law, that's what we have to do, and we have to maintain that. So we're always looking for those, again, that term, creative ways that we can boost what we need to do. If we can increase enrollment, like I was talking about with the open resources and educational, that means more part-time jobs. Maybe if we even get it up further, we'll have more classes on Friday, more weekend classes. I'm even thinking even further outside the box with the dual enrollment initiative that was signed by the governor a few months back, that we have satellite campuses at our unified school districts, that we can have our college professors, you, there and teaching classes at those campuses and funding them with assistance from the unified school districts. Again, we've got to be creative on how we're delivering our education.
The next one, why did the ACCJC initial report call out the board, and what has changed to keep that from happening again?
Well, let's see, why did they call out the board? Well, that's it's spelled out specifically the reasons why. They thought that the board was micromanaging, and I'm gonna paraphrase here, thought the board was micromanaging the institution. And they specifically provided us with recommendations on how to correct that. We, as the board, implemented those, took those recommendations to heart. We worked towards the improvements towards that end. And I want to say that in the last 3 years, for the very most part, we've started to work collegially.
Thank you. The next one, how does open resources boost revenue?
Well, here's the way I look at it. We do open resource educational materials. And Rio Hondo, Compton College, Long Beach City, Cypress, and students look at course catalogs. All tuition is the same for all of the institutions. If they're gonna spend $1,000 or more each semester, or every semester, a couple $1,000s a year at all of these institutions on textbooks, lab materials, whatever, not here. Now you're a student on limited funds, limited revenues. I can save a couple $1,000s by going to Cerritos, and it's gonna cost me a couple $1,000s to go to Rio Hondo or Long Beach City. Where are you gonna go? We all know students, I mean, look at the neighborhoods. Kids are gonna save $35 or $45, whatever it costs to get a parking pass, and they're gonna park in the neighborhood and not buy the parking pass. Absolutely, it's gonna increase revenue.
Thank you. This is another cross-college comparison question. What is your feeling regarding the two-tiered fee schedule that a few community colleges started recently? Example, Long Beach City College.
We discussed that a few years back when Santa Monica did a two-tier tuition schedule.
They didn't do it.
Pardon me?
They were considering it, but they never did it.
No, I thought they did implement it. And they got, there was such
Only
an
for summer
up,
school, yeah.
I thought there was an uproar, horrendous uproar. And we discussed it a few years back, and that's as far as it got. Now, I think it's worth addressing again. But all of these ideas that we collectively can come up with for additional revenues to address for the college, that's what they'll do. That's what I think we need to do, is discuss them. But as we discuss them, it will involve every constituency group on campus, including students and including the community. How do we handle this? These are what the issues are facing the college in the future, and here's suggestions, here's ideas, these are some of potential solutions. And that's what we need to do. We need to market every issue, every campaign, and see what will work, what won't work.
My friends, we are running out of time, so I'm going to try to get to the questions that have an easy
You
answer.
can ask more questions, and I'll just say thank you as a closing statement.
We have more questions than we have time. Are you open to the possibility of another early retirement incentive package or golden handshake?
Yes, next question.
A higher education institution is a complex organization.
Understatement.
How do you perceive the faculty's role, their impact in this bargaining or organizing action? Organization.
Well, I think I answered that in your questionnaire.
Their impact in this organization, I'm sorry.
I think I answered that. That was a similar question in your questionnaire. Vital was my response. There's no other way to put it. We wouldn't be a higher institution of education without you.
What do you think is the best way for the board to understand the frustration of students and faculty voiced at these meetings?
I can't speak for the rest of the board. I'm pretty sure the message is heard and it's delivered well. When information is delivered to me of that level of frustration, I turn around and look at the president superintendent and say, handle it. Again, I focus on the how, not the what.
In fairness,
Keep going.
I don't know if I need to, we have time for these.
Again, my closing statement will be thank you, so if you want to ask more
We have
questions.
time for maybe
Go ahead.
one more minute.
Can start when he's scheduled
Okay.
for.
These two are very close in relationship to each other, so I'm going to read them both, but you can respond to
Sure.
them as if there were just one. The first one, how can you justify supporting, endorsing, and serving as a delegate for Donald Trump, considering that even prior to securing the nomination, he made racial statements that were offensive to over half of our students, and then the next, this is the other person, the other card. There are national Republicans all throughout the U.S. who have denounced the Republican presidential nominee. Why would you attend the RNC knowing that the nominee shows hate, divisiveness, etc.? Please explain.
Well, let me tell you how I came to, I don't know how to start. What I mentioned to a couple of you, when the presidential season began, I watched every presidential debate, both Republican and Democratic. I logged into every candidate's website. I followed their information statements. The candidate that I hoped would run didn't. The candidate that I hoped would be chosen as a vice presidential candidate was considered but wasn't selected. And as I watched all of these candidates, these individuals, some made very salient, intelligent comments. Others got weeded out very soon. People that I liked and I thought would be very positive occupants of the White House and run our country well didn't make the cut. I didn't like all of the things that Donald Trump said, as I mentioned in how I voted on the platform. I couldn't support the party's platform on women's right to choose. I couldn't support the party's platform on the gay issues, and as few as a few other things. But as it came down, we've all heard this saying before, it's a lesser of two evils. And of all the presidential elections that I've followed, this is one of the worst, I think, where we've gotten the real lesser of two evils. And it just flabbergasts me that out of, what do we have, how many people we have in this country, 350 million people, and it came down to these two. And this is how I made a decision. I started getting phone calls, I think it was in March and April, from the California Republican Party. Then I was getting calls from the Cruz campaign and Marco Rubio's campaign and Donald Trump's campaign. And these calls that I was getting, I stayed very non-committal. Yeah, would you be considered a delegate? And I said, interesting, how did you get my number? It was just a phenomenal thing. And the more I thought about it, what a great opportunity this would be. And by the time I really accepted this thought to go to Cleveland, and this was on my dime. The California Republican Party didn't pay my way, I paid it. Airfare, hotel room, time away from work, meals and expenses, and a $900 fee to the Republican Party just to go. It wasn't cheap, and it was more like I was paying for the experience than I was. It was just a phenomenal experience. But again, I wish we had other candidates. And as I said, never gonna happen. And as far as the language, yeah, it's pretty hateful, isn't it? I agree. And it's just not right. And I think that's just his style of campaigning. You read or you listen to what he has to say, or you listen to what the other candidates have to say, and then the next day their spin doctors are, well, they didn't mean to say it this way, or they interpreted it that way. It's politics. I don't think I would change it. I would, if I had an opportunity to go again. Well, I'm not going to go again. If I had an opportunity to go back in time, and would I go to that convention again? Yes, I would, just for the experience. It was phenomenal, and you saw the television. I mean, I'm sitting from here to Frantone's, closer, every night to the podium, and the speakers were phenomenal. Marcus Luttrell from Lone Survivor spoke. I mean, every night, each speaker, the next speaker was even greater than the previous speaker, and the speaker after that was even greater than the previous speaker that had just finished. it was an
But they're
incredible
also
night.
fucking hateful too. I mean, Jesus
It was.
Christ.
All right, so on that, on that note, we
But
might have
let's look at the other side too, of the other convention.
The other side-
There was, the other side, the other convention wasn't as rosy either.
time.
On that note, we can always schedule a meeting where you can come and speak. Thank you.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Hudson.
you. Thank you again. Appreciate your time.